The moment I reached across the table, Gerald Sutton looked at my hand like I'd set something broken in front of him. He didn't take it. He leaned back, glanced around the room, making sure everyone was watching, and said it loud enough for the whole table to hear. "We don't shake hands with contractors. You can wait outside." The laughter came fast, not big laughs, the quiet kind. A few smirks, somebody near the window covering his mouth. One guy 2 seats down actually turned away like he was looking at something on the wall. I didn't pull my hand back right away. I kept it there for a second and looked at Gerald straight on. He didn't like that. His eyes went from my hand to my face, checking if I understood what he'd just said. I understood. I lowered my hand on my own terms, walked to the empty chair at the far end of the table, and sat down. Nobody corrected him. Gerald tapped the table once. "Let's get started. My name is Walter Pruitt. I'm 54 years old. I run a private equity firm out of Columbus Pruitt Capital Group, and I've been in this business for 30 years. I'm telling you this because what happened next matters a lot more if you know who was sitting at that end of the table. Allegheny Industrial Partners is a mid-size infrastructure company out of Pittsburgh. Bridges, ports, a couple of regional energy contracts. Solid assets, shaky management. They'd been working a deal for close to a year, acquiring a smaller logistics operation in western Pennsylvania, and they needed outside capital to close it. $340 million. That's what they needed. That's why I was there. My firm had agreed to provide it. I'd spent 4 months on due diligence. Reviewed their books twice, talked to their project leads, flew out to walk the physical assets. I know infrastructure. I've known it since I was a junior analyst eating a gas station sandwich at my desk because I couldn't afford the lunch spots the senior guys used. I didn't go to Wharton. I went to Ohio State on a partial scholarship and worked nights my first 2 years to cover the gap. Everything I have, I built from the ground up. Nobody handed me anything. That background matters here. Before the meeting, my outside counsel had drafted a conduct provision into the deal agreement. Both sides signed it. The language was straightforward. Any documented disrespect, public humiliation, or behavior that caused material reputational harm during the active negotiation period was grounds for immediate capital withdrawal. No warning, no cure period, no renegotiation. Done. I'd used that clause once before, about 6 years back, on an $85 million deal with a manufacturer in Cleveland. He found out the hard way what immediate meant. I didn't include the clause as a trap. I included it because 30 years in this business teaches you one thing above everything else: how a counterparty treats you before the money moves tells you exactly how they'll treat you after. Every time Gerald Sutton had just told me to wait outside, on camera, in front of his entire board, I sat at the far end of the table and watched. They ran through projections first, timelines, growth assumptions, cost models that were, to be honest, built on a lot of hope. Clifford Sutton, Gerald's son, 38 years old, the man they were putting in as CEO, sat 2 seats to his father's right. Every time Gerald made a point, Clifford nodded. Every time a board member pushed back on a number, Clifford looked at his father before he said anything. He was 38 years old and still waiting for his dad to tell him what to think. That's not a CEO. That's a placeholder. Howard Greer, the finance director, was different. He sat across the table with a yellow legal pad, and I noticed he was the only person in the room actually writing things down. He caught my eye once early on. Just for a second, he looked like a man who'd seen this go wrong before and was already doing the math on how bad it was going to get. At some point, Gerald gestured toward the folder I'd brought in, standard Brown Company logo small in the lower corner, and said, "You can leave that with the assistants. We'll get to the capital portion later." "I'll keep it with me," I said. He paused. "That wasn't a suggestion." "The folder stays here," I said. "It's relevant to this meeting." A couple of people looked up. Clifford glanced at his father. Gerald held my eyes for a beat, then turned back to the screen. "Moving on," he said. About 45 minutes in, Howard set down his pen and said, "Carefully, before we get to final terms, we still need to confirm authorization on the capital release." Gerald waved it off. "Legal's handling the paperwork." "It's not a paperwork issue at this level," Howard said. "It requires direct sign-off from the capital controller." "That's a different step." Gerald looked annoyed. "Then get them on a call." Howard looked at me. "Not long, just long enough. That would be me," I said. The room went quiet. The kind of quiet that means something just shifted and everyone felt it, but nobody wants to be the first to say so. Gerald stared. "I'm sorry, I'm the managing partner authorized to release the funds," I said, sole signatory on the full commitment. "If you want $340 million to move, I'm the one who has to say yes." The board member to Gerald's left, older guy, gray suit, the kind of face that had seen a lot of deals close and a lot of deals fall apart, leaned forward slowly. "You're saying you control the entire commitment, all of it," I said. Nobody said anything for a moment. Then a second board member, the one who'd laughed the loudest earlier, cleared his throat and looked down at the table. Gerald's jaw tightened. Why wasn't this established before today? I looked at him. Nobody asked. That landed. I could see it in the way the room shifted. Small movements, chairs adjusting, a pen set down a little too carefully. People were doing the math. Rewinding the last 45 minutes, replaying the contractor comment, counting the witnesses. Clifford leaned forward. First time he'd moved without looking at his father first. "How much authority are we talking about exactly?" "Every dollar," I said. The room recalibrated. Gerald straightened in his chair and reset his expression. The practiced kind of reset you learn when you've spent decades running meetings. He folded his hands on the table. "Well," he said, "now that roles are clear, perhaps we should take a step back and do this properly." "We could," I said. "If you'd like." He paused just a half second too long, then, "Let's take a short recess." Chairs pushed back. People stood up quickly, the way they do when they're relieved to stop sitting in a room where something uncomfortable just happened. Clifford stood, looked at me once, then followed his father out without saying anything. Howard stayed seated for a moment. He looked at me across the table. He didn't ask anything. He just gave me a small nod, the kind that says, "I know what you're about to do," and then he stood and walked out. I waited until the room was empty. Then I stood, picked up the folder, and walked out to the hallway. Two board members were standing near the windows at the far end, talking low. They stopped when they saw me come through the door. One of them looked at the floor. The other one found something interesting to look at out the window. Gerald was already halfway down the hall. Phone to his ear. Voice low, already reshaping the story he was going to tell. Clifford was standing near the elevator bank. He watched me walk toward him, then looked away. I found a quiet spot around the corner, took out my phone, and pulled up one number. He picked up on the second ring. "Go ahead," he said. "Activate the withdrawal," I said. "Full amount. Effective immediately. Reason code. Conduct during negotiations. Documentation is available. Full meeting recording." Short pause. Just long enough to make sure he'd heard it right. "Full amount?" "Full amount, understood," he said. "We'll execute." The line went dead. I stood there for a second. 30 years of work doesn't need a pep talk. The decision was already made the moment Gerald opened his mouth. I was just catching up to it officially. I went back inside and sat down at the end of the table. The meeting came back to order. Slides back on the screen. Projections, timelines, numbers that still assumed $340 million was sitting exactly where it had always been. Gerald ran it like nothing had changed, confident, controlled, moving through agenda items at a pace that said, "We're behind schedule. Let's not waste time." Clifford sat in his chair and watched the screen. He'd gone quieter than before. I noticed he wasn't nodding along the same way anymore. Then the phone started. First one, then two more. A low, uneven buzzing, spreading down the length of the table, one device at a time. Gerald looked up. "Can we silence the devices, please?" Howard Greer was already reading his screen. He went pale in stages, like someone was slowly turning a dial. He set the phone down, picked it up again, read something else. "Hold on," he said. Quiet, almost to himself. Clifford leaned toward him. "What is it?" Howard didn't answer. He looked at his screen one more time, then set the phone face down on the table. He took a breath. "A primary capital commitment," he said. "It's been withdrawn." The room stilled. Gerald turned his head slowly. "What do you mean withdrawn?" "Effective about 12 minutes ago," Howard said. "Full amount, $340 million. It's confirmed and cleared." "That's not possible," someone said. "We're mid-meeting. It's already done." Howard said. A board member 2 seats from Gerald pushed his chair back an inch without realizing it. Another one was staring at his own phone now, reading the same thing. The room had the kind of silence where you can hear the ventilation system. Gerald turned to me. His voice came out flat. You did this. Yes, I said. You can't just pull capital mid-negotiation. We have a signed letter of intent. I opened the folder and slid it toward the center of the table. The conduct provision, I said, filed, approved, and binding on both sides. Any documented conduct that causes material harm to the capital partner during active negotiations triggers immediate withdrawal, no warning required. No cure period. That was boilerplate, Gerald said. It was drafted by my outside counsel, I said, at my request, and this entire meeting has been recorded. The board member in the gray suit turned and looked at the small red light in the corner of the room. Still on. Still steady. That can be contextualized, Gerald said quickly. People say things in negotiations. It doesn't mean it's on camera, Howard said. He wasn't looking at Gerald when he said it. He was looking at the table. Clifford spoke then, low voice, not to anyone in particular. The meeting was live-streamed. Gerald shot him a look. Clifford didn't take it back. We can renegotiate, Gerald said. His voice had changed. The edges were gone. There's still a deal here. The assets are solid. The timeline is realistic. We can. I stood up, slow enough that every eye at the table followed. This isn't a negotiation, I said. It's a consequence. Gerald stared at me. Something moved across his face, not quite anger anymore. Something closer to the moment a man realizes the ground under him isn't as solid as he thought. You walked in here with a folder and a grudge, he said. I walked in here with $340 million and 30 years of work, I said. You decided what I was before I sat down. That's on you. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Around the table, the distancing had already started. Not dramatic. Nobody stood up or pointed fingers. It was quieter than that. Chairs moved back an inch. Eyes went to phones. Two board members leaned together and spoke in voices too low to hear. The lead independent director, gray suit, the one who'd been watching everything carefully since the contractor comment, set both hands flat on the table. We need to call an emergency session, he said. Tonight, if possible. Gerald turned on him. You're not serious. The withdrawal is executed and public. The director said, regional bond market is already reacting. I've got 2 lender calls coming in right now. He held up his phone so Gerald could see the screen. We don't have the option of waiting. This is one incident, Gerald said. We can manage one incident. It's on camera. Howard said again, still not looking at Gerald. Clifford pushed back from the table slightly. He looked like a man trying to figure out which way the exit was. His appointment as CEO hadn't even been ratified yet. Everything his father had spent the last year building toward the acquisition, the leadership transition, the whole carefully arranged succession was sitting in pieces on a conference room table in Pittsburgh. He looked at me from across the table, not angry, something more like someone who just figured out a thing too late. I should have said something, he said, earlier, when it happened. Yeah, I said. You should have. I picked up my folder, buttoned my jacket, and walked out. Nobody followed me. I rode the elevator down alone, walked through the lobby past the reception desk, and pushed through the front door. The Pittsburgh afternoon was gray and cold, the kind of cold that gets into your collar before you realize it. My pickup was in the same spot in the lot where I'd left it 4 hours ago. I could still see the conference room windows from where I stood. Nobody was looking down. I sat in the truck for a minute before I started it, not thinking about anything in particular, just sitting. Then I drove. My phone started going before I hit the highway. I let it. Analysts, a partner, 2 numbers I didn't recognize, probably reporters or people connected to people at Allegheny who'd already heard. I didn't answer any of them. I checked into a hotel near the airport around 5 standard room, nothing fancy. I set my folder on the desk and sat on the edge of the bed and looked at it for a while. By 6 o'clock, the messages had stacked up. Subject lines I could read in the preview without opening. Emergency investor call scheduled. Liquidity review initiated. Board chair administrative leave pending review. One from a trade reporter I'd talked to twice in my career. Quick comment, just a sentence. I didn't answer that one either. My phone rang around 7. I looked at the screen. Clifford Sutton. I let it ring twice, then picked up. They're questioning my appointment, he said. His voice was tight, controlled but tight. The board wants distance. From me, from the whole transition. That happens, I said. You could clear this up. Tell them the issue was with my father, not with the company, not with me. I sat with that for a second. I could, I said. I won't. Silence on the line. You're comfortable letting them define it that way, he said. Your withdrawal triggered everything. My withdrawal revealed everything, I said. There's a difference. He exhaled, long and slow. I didn't do anything to you. No, I said. You didn't do anything, that's the problem. He didn't have an answer for that. I waited a few seconds, then ended the call. I set the phone face down on the nightstand and turned on the TV. Some cable news channel running a business segment. A crawl at the bottom of the screen mentioned regional infrastructure bonds. The anchor was talking about something else entirely. I watched it without really watching it. I thought about a boardroom I'd sat in 10 years ago. Different city, different company, different men, but the same kind of room, same kind of table, same way they looked at me when I walked in. That time, I was on the other side of it. I was 44 years old, and they let me go with 2 weeks' notice and a handshake that felt like a formality. I had a mortgage, 2 kids still in school, about 4 months of savings if we cut everything down to the bone. I rebuilt from scratch. Took 6 years to get back to where I'd been, and 4 more after that to build something worth protecting. 10 years total, a lot of gas station sandwiches, a lot of early mornings in a home office that used to be a spare bedroom. Gerald Sutton had never had a year like that in his life. I'd bet everything I own on it. Men like Gerald have never had to rebuild anything because nothing they had was ever taken from them. They inherit the table. They assume the seat. And when someone walks in who built his own chair and carried it into the room himself, they don't see competence. They see a contractor. A message came in from Allegheny's legal counsel just before 9. We acknowledge your position. No further contact will be made. I read it once and deleted it. Then I turned off the light and slept without my phone beside me for the first time in longer than I could remember. The call came just after 7 in the morning. Different voice this time, not legal counsel. Someone from the board's governance committee measured professional. The kind of voice that gets used when an organization is trying to put distance between itself and a problem it created. Mr. Pruitt, we want to acknowledge the events of yesterday and express that the board takes the conduct provisions seriously. Gerald Sutton has been placed on administrative leave pending a full review. A pause. We'd like to discuss a path forward. There may still be a viable deal here if both parties are willing to. There isn't, I said. Another pause, longer this time. We're prepared to make significant concessions on terms. The underlying assets haven't changed. The acquisition target is still sound. We believe with the right restructuring, the assets were always sound, I said. That was never the issue. Then help us understand what would need to change. Nothing, I said. I'm not coming back to the table. Silence on the line, then. So you're walking away from a viable infrastructure deal because of one incident. I walked away yesterday, I said. I'm just telling you now. I ended the call, set the phone on the nightstand, and got dressed. By mid-morning, the shape of it had settled into something permanent. Gerald Sutton on administrative leave. Clifford CEO appointment suspended indefinitely. A 1-paragraph item in a regional trade publication. No names, just a reference to a withdrawn capital commitment and an emergency governance review at an unnamed Pittsburgh infrastructure firm. In the PE community, nobody needed the name. Word had already moved the way it always does in a small industry, quietly and faster than any press release. I called my 3 partners on a video call around 10. No slides, no agenda. We're moving the $340 million to the Youngstown Bridge project, I said. I want to be operational by Monday. One of them leaned toward the camera. You sure the Allegheny deal had better margin on paper? Youngstown's real, I said. Allegheny was paper on top of paper. Nobody argued with that. Another partner asked if I wanted to put out a statement. Something brief, just to get ahead of whatever narrative was forming in the regional market. No, I said. The trade piece is already circulating. Let it circulate, I said. The record speaks. We wrapped up in under 20 minutes. That's how it works when there's nothing left to debate. I checked out of the hotel just before noon, loaded my bag into the truck, tossed the folder on the passenger seat. The Pittsburgh skyline was visible from the parking structure. Bridges over the Monongahela, the old steel country remade into something new and still figuring out what it wanted to be. I'd always liked this city. It reminded me of the people who built it. Nobody here got anything handed to them either. I took the long way to the highway. No particular reason. Just didn't feel like rushing. About 20 minutes outside the city, I passed a hardware store I'd noticed on the drive in 2 days ago. Family-owned place. Looked like it had been there since the 70s. Wood floors, hand-painted sign, the kind of shop that still has bins of loose bolts sorted by size near the front door. I pulled in. I didn't need anything specific. I picked up a box of deck screws I'd probably use eventually and a tube of weatherproof sealant. The man behind the counter was somewhere in his 60s, the kind of guy who knows where everything in the store is without looking. He rang me up slowly, the way people do when they're not in a hurry and don't see why you should be either. "You're not from here," he said. "Not unfriendly. Just observing." "Columbus," I said. "Had a meeting in the city yesterday." He nodded, made change. "Go all right?" I thought about the conference room. Gerald's face when the phone started buzzing. Howard going pale. Clifford saying I should have said something to a room that had already moved on. "Yeah," I said. "It went all right." He put the bag on the counter and pushed it toward me. "Good. Not enough of those lately." I drove home. Somewhere on 376 heading east, with Pittsburgh behind me and 3 hours of Ohio highway ahead. I found myself thinking about Gerald Sutton, not with anger. I was past that before I even left the building. More like curiosity. I wondered if he'd ever had a year like I had at 44. If he'd ever sat at a kitchen table at midnight trying to figure out how to make a mortgage payment with 4 months of savings and 2 kids who didn't know anything was wrong. If he'd ever rebuilt from nothing, if he'd ever had to. I didn't think so. Men like Gerald inherit the table. They've never had to carry their own chair into the room. So when someone walks in who built everything himself, no Ivy League name on the wall, no family money behind him, just 30 years of showing up and doing the work, they don't see a peer. They don't see a partner, they see a contractor. That's fine. I've been underestimated by better men than Gerald Sutton. The difference is I stopped being surprised by it a long time ago. I just started preparing for it instead. If you've spent any time in a room like that one, if you've ever had someone look right through you because of what you drive or where you went to school or what your name sounds like, then you already know what I'm about to say. Respect isn't something you offer after the money shows up. It isn't something you hand out when the leverage becomes clear. It's the price of doing business. It's the cost of entry. You either bring it to the table at the start or you don't get to sit there at all. Gerald didn't bring it, so I took mine back. Every dollar of it.